Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Lubbock, Texas. My name is Gail Madison, and I'm your service leader today. Well, actually, I am your service today. Our opening words: real laughter is spontaneous. Like water from the spring, it bubbles forth a creation of mingled action and spontaneity, two magic potions in themselves, and the very essence of laughter, the unrestrained emotion within us. That was by Douglas Fairbanks. I need to start with a couple of announcements. One is that Kristen has been working on ways to get some lessons for the kids available to you online. The Cubbies lesson is going to help the children learn to recognize signs, symbols, and rituals inside and outside of our congregation that show how we live our Unitarian Universalist beliefs. And the youth will be discussing the philosopher Berkeley and existence. What does it mean, and how do we know that we are real? Interesting topic for this time that we are living in. Now, first off, I need to tell you that I watched the service that we did last week and listened very carefully to the children's story, and my brain went, who is that robot reading the story? And I realized a few things. Talking into a camera is just plain weird. But probably the weirdest thing is looking around and seeing empty chairs. So I sat down and created this. This is probably the most important visual I'm going to have. Because what I did was think, when I've been in the service and there are people in here, Harv is usually over there. The Dermeyers might sit over there. Jake, perhaps right there. Ted and Sarah, somewhere along there. But I know that somewhere along this front row, I'll be able to see Sylvia and Sarah and Sue. Dominique might sit right over there. Mary Beth and Judy might sit over there. And then if I'm doing the service, then the kids, the youth, are in the back. The Zoe, Jasper, Ariel, Zach, Asher, Sarah, Archer, Justine, they would be sitting back there. If this were a normal service, they would be up here with me, helping me do the service. But we're not in extremely normal days right now. So let's just get going, remembering that in my mind's eye, I'm seeing a full congregation. I'm seeing a full congregation, and more importantly, I am feeling the life energy that is emanated by that congregation. And hopefully, that will take away the robot aspect of my delivery. What are we talking about today? Well, we talked about laughter. So you're going to see this a lot. Laugh. Laughing is good for you. Mark Twain knew that. He said, against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. Henry Ward Beecher knew that. A person without a sense of humor is like a wagon without springs, jolted by every pebble in the road. Why? Well, humor draws our attention away from our upsets, releases tension so we don't cower in fear or explode in anger. We are living in very difficult times right now, folks. It's hard for us as adults. It's hard for the kids. It's really hard for the kids. So one of the tools we need to learn how to use is humor. Psychoanalyst Dr. Milton Grotjan said, to have a sense of humor is to have an understanding of human suffering and misery. Humor bespeaks a sad acceptance of our weaknesses and frustration, but laughter also means freedom. We may not actually solve our problems with humor, but we may discover while we are laughing a way out. Let's look at perspective. Humor provides perspective. Here's an example. Dr. Paul Ruskins demonstrates this during a class he was teaching about aging. The patient neither speaks nor comprehends the spoken word. Sometimes she babbles incoherently for hours on end. She's disoriented about person, place, and time. She does, however, respond to her name. I have worked with her for the past 6 months, but she still shows complete disregard for her physical appearance and makes no effort to assist in her own care. She must be fed, bathed, and clothed by others. Because she has no teeth, her food must be pureed. Her shirt is usually soiled from almost incessant drooling. She doesn't walk. Her sleep pattern is erratic. She wakes up in the middle of the night and her screaming awakens others. Most of the time she is friendly and happy, but several times a day she gets quite agitated without apparent cause. Then she waits until someone comes to comfort her. What must it be like to care for this person? Well, Dr. Ruskin said, it's my 6-month-old daughter. So perspective. Norman Cousins wrote a book, Anatomy of an Illness. He had an illness, a chronic illness that caused him a tremendous amount of pain. And they would give him pain medication. But he later claimed that 10 minutes of belly-rippling laughter would give him 2 hours of pain-free sleep when nothing else, not even morphine, could help him. Laughter is the sun that drives winter from the human face, Victor Hugo. You can't deny laughter. When it comes, it plops down in your favorite chair and stays as long as it wants. And you'll never guess, that was Stephen King. Laughter heals all wounds. And that's one thing that everybody shares. No matter what you're going through, it makes you forget about your problems. I think the world should keep laughing. And that was Kevin Hart. So, you've been welcomed. You've got an idea of what our session is going to be about. Normally at this time, I would be reading some ritualistic type things about how we conduct the services, the fact that we pay for this through our own monies since we don't have a centralized authority. And that's not happening right now. So one of the things you can do to help the church, and we sent our March pledge in last week, is to mail in your pledge. But also, you know, this comes a time when we will be doing joys and concerns. One of the things we can do is among ourselves, among our UUs, is make sure that we're keeping in contact with each other so we know what the pain is, we know what the joy is, and we are supporting each other. Now, we have a children's story. When I first did this service many, many years ago, well, not that many years ago, Morgan would bring the cubbies in, the little ones, and they would walk over and they would plop down on the floor right there. A few of them had to stop, run up, hug mom and dad, and then come plop down on the floor. But they would be there ready to listen to their story. Well, we're going to read a story for them, and it's called The Dot. The Dot is by Peter H. Reynolds, and it is absolutely one of my favorite children's books. Art class was over, But Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. There. Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it very carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now, sign it." Vashti thought for a moment. "Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name." The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. I can make a better dot than that. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted, a red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow. She discovered she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting, lots of little dots in many colors. If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not making a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're really a great artist. I wish I could draw," he said. "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Sign it." That is absolutely one of my favorite books. Excuse me while I pick up vitamin H. And you'll find out what this is in a few minutes. When we did this session a few years ago, we had a poetry blitz. And I don't know, most of you adults are probably not familiar with Jack Prelutsky, but he is an absolutely wonderful children's poet. And I'm going to read you one of his poems. I'll let you look at the picture first, and then I'll read the poem. The poem is titled, "Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face." Be glad your nose is on your face, not pasted on some other place. For if it were where it is not, you might dislike your nose a lot. Imagine if your precious nose were sandwiched between your toes. That clearly would not be a treat, for you'd be forced to smell your feet. Your nose would be a force of dread were it attached to the top of your head. It would soon drive you to despair, forever tickled by your hair. Within your ear, your nose would be an absolute catastrophe, for when you were obliged to sneeze, your brain would rattle from the breeze. Your nose, instead, through thick and thin, remains between your eyes and chin, not pasted on some other place. Be glad your nose is on your face. And as I said, when we presented this before, we had the poetry blitz, and the kids were reading a lot of these short poems that I had. But I included this one this time because April is National Poetry Month. And I want you to spend a lot of the month finding that one really great poem that you love dearly, because April 30th is Poem in Your Pocket Day. That is the day you are supposed to have a poem in your pocket, and when you meet people that you like, you read the poem to them. And yes, I did do that when I was working. And the staff was very kind. Now, on to the meat of the message. Most of this is taken from this book called The Healing Power of Humor. This is one of my favorite books, written by Alan Klein. Laughing is good for you. Mark Twain knew that. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand, including what fell on the floor, which I can't put up right now. But laughter, humor, gives us power. In laughter, we transcend our predicaments. We are lifted above our feelings of fear, discouragement, and despair. People who can laugh at their setbacks no longer feel sorry for themselves. They feel uplifted, encouraged, and empowered. So laughter gives us power. It also helps us cope. Here's a story. In her best-selling book, Pathfinder, Gail Sheehy discovered that the ability to see humor in situations was one of the 4 coping devices that Pathfinders, people who overcome life's crises, used as a protection against change and uncertainty. With remarkable consistency, she reports, people with high senses of well-being got through their rough passages by seeing humor in their difficult situations. And we, as a planet right now, are in a pretty difficult situation. So laughter gives us power, and it helps us to cope. But it also provides perspective. In the presence of humor, a clergyman writes about a conversation that takes place between a young boy and his grandfather. The grandfather asked about his progress in building a doghouse for his new puppy. The boy tells him that he can't saw straight. He bends the nails when he hammers, and he often splinters the wood. But other than that, says the boy, I'm doing okay. Instead of being weighed down by the misguided saw cuts, the bent nails, and the splintered wood, which inevitably befall all of us throughout life, humor keeps us in balance. Things lighten up and reminds us that in spite of everything, we may just be okay. So it helps with perspective. It also helps physiologically. No, that was the 17. Here it is. The art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. That's a quote by Norman Cousins. Despite historical and literary confirmations, it was not until Norman Cousins, former editor of the Saturday Review, wrote about his experiences with how his experiences with laughter changed his life, that the scientific world began to take humor seriously. By now, the story of how Cousins used laughter as an integral part of his healing is familiar to most people. As he reported in his book, Anatomy of an Illness, his laughter, along with massive doses of vitamin C, helped turn the tide of a serious collagen disease, an illness of the connective tissue. I made the joyous discovery, Cousin reports, that 10 minutes of genuine belly laughter had an anesthetic effect and would give me at least 2 hours of pain-free sleep. So, humor, laughter gives us power, helps us cope, provides perspective, keeps us balanced, and actually does provide physiological benefits. That sounds great. So now what we need to do is to learn how to use humor as our own personal healing tool. And for that, we are going to be thinking about vitamin H, which is, of course, humor. Okay. Here we are looking at irony. To find irony, you need to look at the relationship of how something started out and how it wound up. Some examples. A plane designed to provide a safe airborne command post for the president in the case of a nuclear war was disabled after it flew into a flock of geese. Some irony there. An airline lost a man's luggage. Nothing new or funny in that, except for one little detail. He was the only passenger on the plane. Seeing humor in things that do not work is another way of finding the comic irony of life. And I'm old enough to know there is a lot of comic irony in life. One down-and-out man realized this when he received a money order for $50, and the only person who could verify his identity was someone he owed $45 to. A preliminary step to finding the ironies in your life is to look for what I call nutty news in today's newspaper. Then as you go through your day, stop from time to time and see if you can find some incident in which the relationship of what was intended and what resulted created some irony. Oh, then we can whistle a happy tune. The point is, attitude is everything. Back in the Middle Ages, and I love this story, back in the Middle Ages, according to a story told by educator Edward Pulling, a dispatcher went out to determine how laborers felt about their work. He went to a building site in France. He approached the first worker and asked, "What are you doing?" "What are you, blind?" the worker snapped back. "I'm cutting these impossible boulders with primitive tools and putting them together the way the boss tells me. I'm sweating under this blazing sun. It's back-breaking work, and it's boring me to death." The dispatcher quietly backed off and retreated to a second worker, asked the same question. "What are you doing?" The worker replied, "I'm shaping these boulders into usable forms, which are then assembled according to the architect's plans. It's hard work, and sometimes it gets repetitive, but I earn 5 francs a week, and that keeps the wife and kids comfortable. It's a job, could be worse." Somewhat encouraged, the dispatcher went on to a third worker. "And what are you doing?" The worker lifted his arms up into the sky and said, "Why, can't you see? I'm building a cathedral." So, attitude is everything. And then we go to affirmation. This one I really like. And you'll see why in a minute. You can either make up your own affirmation or use some that I'm going to be suggesting to you in a sec. But what you have to do is to keep the affirmation that you're saying in positive form and repeat it to yourself as many times a day as you can. Write it on numerous 3x5 inch cards and put them around your home so that you will find them and use them a lot. So here are the suggestions. Here's one suggestion. I, Gail, will get one more bit of laughter in my life today. And that's not all that hard. I've got Harv, and then I've got Danny, our puppy dog. Or this one. I, Gail, am thankful for the joyous things in my life. Even in this time, we need to be looking for and acknowledging the joy. Or, and this is my favorite, put this above every mirror in the house. This person is not to be taken seriously. Remember, every mirror in the house. Got the whole family covered. Then we get to prop power. You gotta have props. One of my favorite props is a bottle of bubbles. And yes, I have been known to do this, and yes, I did do it at work. Things are getting tense, and people are really not being productive because they are tense. You whip out your bottle of bubbles, and you go, pretty amazing what. Oops, let's go back a sentence. We need to learn how to laugh. When I did this before and I had the kids and the congregation, everybody was physically here. We stood up in front and led what we called choral laughter. It's not as silly as it sounds. This exercise uses a little bit of nonsense to help you get your perspective on your problems. Identify some difficulty, problem, or anxiety in your life. Start with some small irritation or loss. Now state out loud whatever is bugging you. My husband never puts his dirty clothes in the hamper. That's not true, he does, but it's in the book. Then immediately after, repeat one of the following phrases. Ha ha, or ho ho, or hee hee. Try to say these last couple of words with lots of expression. Putting the two together, it would look like this. My husband never puts his dirty clothes in the hamper. Do you feel silly ranting about your problems and then making fun of it? That's the point. When you can play with your problems, even if only in your imagination, you start to get a distance from them and you start to let them go. Words are also extremely important in dealing with the healing art of humor. I'm going to put some word lists up. Think about those words. I'll read them to you. Unhappy, sullen, upset, dark, tears, morose, depressed, sad, gloom, dismal, hopeless, misery, bleak, somber, sorrow, despair. How do they make you feel? Now, let's read these words. Joyful, cheerful, mirthful, amusement, joking, merriment, giggle, delightful, happy, fun, laughter, jovial, glad, jolly, silly, hilarious. That second one makes you feel a heck of a lot better. If as many people believe we are what we think, then maybe we need to rethink the things that disturb us and relabel them. Renaming your experience can alter the way you view your upsets. I discovered this when I was teaching at Slayton High School in a classroom of kids, mostly boys, teenagers, with learning disabilities. By reframing into the positive, it made a huge difference, not only in my life as a teacher, but in how well the kids were able to learn. So, here's an interesting example. Klein, who wrote the book, writes this paragraph. One morning, after completing a difficult section, I accidentally pressed the wrong key on the computer and instantly erased everything I had just written. I was devastated by my loss, but I was determined to use laughter to ease the situation. So for the next few weeks, I told everyone I met I was no longer a writer, I was an eraser. Then, another thing we can do to help us deal with difficult times, and this is one of my favorites, it's a technique that's called Name Your Monster. Find an inanimate object that irritates you and rename it with a fun name. One man who works with 7 computers dressed them up with hats and scarves and named them after the 7 dwarfs. Sometimes, he says, they even act like their name, Dopey, Grumpy, Sleepy, and so on. Maybe you want to shroud your own computer with a black cloth when it is down. Or if not obeying your command, treat it like a puppy in training. Sit, stay, off. There are so many ways that we can learn to use humor to help us get through difficult times. So are you ready to make a commitment to humor? If you are, I have the words somewhere, like here. You're going to write yourself the following letter. Dear me, the one thing I am going to do to get more laughter in my life is... Any Monty Python fans out there? If I'm feeling really down, there's nothing like watching the Ministry of Silly Walks. And that would bring laughter into my life. And if I accomplish that, watching some Monty Python, I will reward myself with another Monty Python CD or DVD, whatever it is, or stream, whatever it is in modern world. Before we go to the closing words, we've got several things to do. A, I forgot to light the chalice. And do I want to light the chalice? Yes, I do. This is the neatest tool for lighting the chalice. You push on the button, and I guess it's doing an electrical whatever through there, and it lights everything up. And I've already said the words for the chalice light, but I will say them again. Laughter heals all wounds, and that's one thing that everybody shares. No matter what you're going through, it makes you forget about your problems. I think the world should keep laughing, especially now. And then we close the service with closing words. Today's closing words come from Molly Ivins. Many a Texas politician has cringed at that name. But so what Molly says, keep fighting for freedom and justice, beloveds, but don't you forget to have fun doing it. Lord, let your laughter ring forth. Be outrageous, ridicule the fraidy cats, and rejoice in all the oddities that freedom can produce. Molly Ivins. And now that's the service. But there's something I need to add. Someone posted on Facebook some information from a psychologist on how to deal with ourselves and within our families with all of the stress that's going on right now with COVID-19. And there were two of those suggestions that I really want to have us look at right now. One of them is develop your own self-care kit. It can look a little bit different for every person, but give it a sensory tone. We have 7 senses: touch, taste, sight, hearing, smell, vestibular, which is movement, and proprioceptive, which is comforting pressure. You know, like a hug from your husband. But also a weighted blanket could provide some of that. So, an idea for each: a soft blanket or stuffed animal, a hot chocolate, photos of vacations, comforting music, lavender or eucalyptus oil, a small swing or rocking chair, a weighted blanket. A journal, an inspirational book, or a mandala coloring book is wonderful. Bubbles to blow. We've already talked about how bubbles are good. Blowing watercolor onto paper might be, through a straw, might be appealing. Mint gum, Listerine strips, ginger ale, frozen Starburst, ice packs, and cold are good for anxiety. This is an excellent idea, but take it a little bit further. If you've got kids at home, help them create their own self-help kit so that they, when they're getting stressed, they can go and pick up their little box and start to feel better. And then the other one, we don't have much control over COVID-19. It's something that is attacking the entire world. And there's so much stress that comes into our lives when we're facing an enemy like that. So this suggestion is find something you can control and control the heck out of it. In moments of big uncertainty that overwhelm your little corner of the world, you find something you can control. Organize your bookshelf. purge your closet, put together furniture, group your toys. Something you have total control over, and that will help you deal with all of this. So, it is now time to extinguish the chalice. And keep in mind that we are all in this together. We care about each other, and we will find ways to stay together. Thank you.